Let me be clear. I never believed in haunted houses. I believed in bad plumbing, poor insulation, creaky wood from half-assed construction, maybe some vermin if you lived in a particularly old building. That kind of stuff. The rational, explainable kind. But the house on Sycamore Lane had something different. Something wrong. I moved in during late September. I was looking for a place that was cheap, out of the city, and most importantly, quiet. The last place had been a thin-walled nightmare of fighting couples and televisions blaring sports at 3 a.m. The ad for this place seemed like a godsend. 2-bed, 1-bath, quiet neighborhood. Hardwood floors. Large yard pets okay. It was a little house, low and long, with chipped gray paint and boarded-up windows on the side facing the trees. The woman who showed it to me didn't work for any agency. She just called herself Ellen. She had the keys and a handwritten lease. I should have asked more questions. I didn't. Rent was half what I expected. The first few nights were uneventful. The floor creaked more than usual. Old wood, uneven boards. It felt like the entire living room tilted just slightly downward, like a gentle slope toward the center. I chalked it up to foundation settling. It was an old house after all, but by the fourth night, I started waking up to the sound of breathing. Not mine. It wasn't constant. It would happen right after I turned off the lights. This faint, drawn-out inhaling sound, as if the house itself was sighing under the weight of sleep. I even checked the vents to see if maybe some airflow was causing a pressure shift. Nothing. One night, I sat in the living room, all the lights off, TV muted. I waited. At 2:37 a.m., I felt it. The floor shifted under me. Just slightly. It wasn't an earthquake, not even a tremor. It was like something underneath had expanded, like the floor had risen a fraction of an inch, held its breath, then settled again. I felt it in my feet, not enough to knock anything over, but enough to feel it in my chest, like standing on a slow heartbeat. The air changed too, just subtly. A pressure. You know how sometimes before a storm, the atmosphere goes heavy and still, and you can feel it in your bones? That's what it was. But it wasn't outside. It was just in the house. Then the breathing started again. Schulft, vet, hollow. The next morning, I put a level on the floor. Not just out of curiosity, out of necessity. I needed to be sure I wasn't going crazy. The bubble and the level shifted slightly toward the center of the room. I moved the level around the house and confirmed it. Everything was tilted inward, toward the middle of the living room. A gentle but undeniable slope, as though the center of the house was sagging down into something, or being pulled. By week 2, it got worse. I started dreaming about the floor, about a thing underneath, pressing against the wooden slats. In my dreams, it wasn't a basement, it was a hollow space, a breathing chamber, moist and warm, and there was something waiting there just beneath the wood. Its breath echoed up through the nails. Its skin pressed against the floor, so close I could almost feel the ridges of its flesh when I walked barefoot. And every morning, the furniture would be off, only by an inch, maybe 2. The coffee table was always slightly closer to the middle of the room. The armchair had moved. Once, the couch had rotated just a hair clockwise, like the entire room was turning to face something. I tested it. I marked the furniture positions with painter's tape before I went to bed. I even took photos with time stamps. The next morning, they had moved. Not by much, but enough to matter. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom. I camped out on the couch with all the lights on and a kitchen knife in my hand. It was the floor. It had to be. Every night it sighed. Every night I swore it rose and fell beneath me, not in sudden jumps, but slow, wet, almost rhythmic motion, like the chest of a sleeping animal. And sometimes when I stepped into the center of the living room, I could swear I sank just a fraction deeper than before. One night, I dropped my phone while walking through the room. It skittered to a stop near the center, screen down. While I bent to pick it up, the floor flexed, like something had just pushed up from underneath. I backed out of the room. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I ripped up one of the floorboards. There was no crawl space, no insulation, just a hollow, a dark, open cavity. I dropped a flashlight down. The beam vanished into pitch blackness. No sound when it hit bottom. I called Helen. No answer. I drove to the address on the lease. It was a burnt-out building. Looked like it had been that way for years. I tried sleeping at a friend's place for a night. No movement. No breathing. But when I got back the next day to grab my things, the living room had changed. The couch, the chairs, the rug, all pulled in closer to the middle. The tape markings were all bent or gone. And on the wall, carved into the plaster above the hollow center of the room, were 3 words. You're already iron. I didn't put that there. I didn't let anyone into the house. I moved out that night, of course, but it didn't leave me alone. Because now, wherever I stay, no matter what room I'm in, I hear it. The soft, distant inhale. A floorboard flexing beneath my bed. The faint, rhythmic pulse beneath the walls. And I'm terrified to sleep, because I don't know if I ever really left, or if the house came with me. This installment expands the psychological and supernatural horror as the narrator investigates further and the boundaries of their reality begin to unravel. I moved in with my brother after leaving the house on Sycamore Lane. I told him I'd had a bad rental experience. I didn't mention the floor, or the breathing, or the hollow space under the living room that seemed to watch me when I slept. He didn't ask questions. He was used to my silences. The first few nights were quiet. His place was new construction, clean lines, bright lighting, and polished laminate floors. No creaking, no shifting. For the first time in weeks, I thought I might be able to sleep through the night. But it started again. It wasn't in the same way, not at first. There were no tilting rooms or warped furniture. But the breathing came back. At first faint, distant, like hearing someone sigh through drywall. I lay awake with my eyes open, heart pounding in my throat, convinced that I'd just imagined it. But the sound grew louder, closer. It began at 2:37 a.m., the same time every night as it had in that house. I recorded audio on my phone just to be sure I wasn't losing my mind. When I played it back, all I heard was silence, punctuated by faint clicks like with settling. But I could hear it when I lay there, not through the recording, in the room, in the bones of the house. My brother noticed I wasn't sleeping. He offered to help. We joked that I had rental PTSD, that my old house had messed with my head. We laughed about it. But every morning, I woke up with new bruises on my back. Not surface bruises, deep ones, as though something heavy had been pressing down on me during the night. I stopped sleeping entirely by the end of the second week. I drank coffee until my stomach hurt, stayed up watching static on muted screens just to stay awake. Then came the incident in the bathroom. I'd been brushing my teeth, trying to wind myself down, telling myself that everything I'd experienced was in my head. I looked down at the sink. The drain pulsed. Not a clog, not bubbles or soap. It pulsed. Once, twice, a slow flex of something under the metal, like it was breathing. I leaned closer. That's when the floor shifted beneath me, slightly, gently, as though the whole house sighed under my feet. I left the apartment and slept in my car that night. I didn't tell my brother, but something had followed me. I thought maybe I brought some object with me from the house. I checked everything, my suitcase, my shoes, even the clothes I'd worn when I left Sycamore Lane. I threw out the old hoodie I'd been sleeping in since moving, just in case. The breathing continued. Then, one night, my brother came to me. His eyes were bloodshot. "Do you hear it too?" he asked. I didn't need to ask what he meant. He pointed to the living room. "It's like the floor. It's not flat. I swear it's curving down toward the center. I measured it. Twice." I felt sick. We both stood there in silence. The center of the room, where the area rug lay, did seem a little lower. The edges of the room tilted in just a bit, as if drawn toward an unseen center. He didn't say anything more. Neither did I. We both slept with our doors locked that night. A few nights later, I had a dream. I was back in the house on Sycamore. The floorboards peeled back like rotting skin, revealing a wet, pink cavity beneath. A massive chamber that exhaled with each of my steps. I was inside something, not a house. A body. The walls pulsed with a slow heartbeat, and something was waking up below. When I jolted awake, my mattress was tilted, literally tilted. My head was almost a foot lower than my feet. The bed frame had sunk into the floor on one side. I screamed. My brother came in. He turned on the lights, and we both stared at the dent in the laminate floor, like a mouth print. He helped me drag the bed out into the hallway. Neither of us slept that night. We tore up the floorboards the next morning. There was no cavity, just insulation, concrete, normal. But the boards we removed from the center were slightly warped inward, as though pressure had been applied from below. "Maybe termites," my brother muttered. I didn't respond. That night, he went to stay with his girlfriend. He couldn't deal with my stress, he said. But I know he was scared too. Left alone, I made a decision. I went back to the Sycamore house. I don't know why. Maybe I thought that going back would undo something. Maybe I thought I could find the source, destroy it, end it. The house was dark, still abandoned, but the front door was unlocked. The air inside was wet, like someone had just breathed into a bag and sealed it. I walked in slowly, flashlight in hand. The floor still tilted toward the living room center. The walls were gray and sweating, and in the middle of the room, the rug was gone. There was a hole, a perfect circular hole in the wood. I knelt beside it, heart hammering in my throat. The wood around it was splintered inward, like something had pulled itself up and out. The beam of my flashlight didn't reach the bottom. I dropped a marble in. I waited. No sound, no impact. Then the breathing started. Not faint this time. Loud, labored, like lungs filled with fluid. Each inhale made the wallpaper ripple. Each exhale pushed dust from the corners of the room. I ran. I don't remember unlocking the door. I don't even remember getting into my car. I just remember driving, windshield wipers dragging across dry glass, headlights slicing through the fog that had appeared from nowhere. I haven't gone back since. But sometimes when I walk across certain parts of my apartment, the floor gives just a little more than it should, and the air feels too thick. And when I'm alone, the breathing returns just long enough to make me wonder if it's waiting, if it followed me again, or worse, if it never left. I woke to the sound of creaking, not the typical house settling kind. This was deliberate, rhythmic, like something heavy was shifting below me in the dark, one measured movement at a time. I lay perfectly still, eyes wide, heart hammering beneath the covers. The sound seemed to come from directly beneath the bed, beneath the floor itself. The air felt thick, like breathing through gauze. It was only 3:12 a.m. I didn't get up. Not then. The next morning, I thought maybe it had been a dream, or maybe the stress was finally sinking deeper into my bones. I tried to distract myself by calling the landlord again. No answer, of course. Then I decided I needed to test the floor again. I placed my hand gently on the hardwood, just beneath the rug. Cold. Not just cold. Cool and moist. I pressed down. The floor sank. Slightly. But definitely. It gave like a mattress with a thick rubber sheet stretched across it. Then it did something it had never done before. It pushed back. The floor exhaled. I staggered back, part of my throat. There was a distinct warm whoosh of air, as though something beneath had compressed and released, like a massive lung expelling breath from under the surface. The whole apartment was silent afterward. Not just quiet silent, like it was holding its breath. That day I left. I took my laptop and drove to a cafe across town, unable to sit in that apartment with its breathing floor and stale air any longer. I researched the building's history. It had been constructed in 1904, originally a boarding house, then apartments post-World War II. There had been fire damage in 1967, repairs, then sporadic tenants since. One article caught my eye. A small police blotter entry from 1983. Tenant at 3B reported structural rot and organic smells beneath the floorboards. Maintenance reported unusual softness in subfloor. Refused further investigation after repeated requests. Tenant vacated. New tenant moved in 1 week later. My unit was 3B. That night, I did something reckless. I pulled the rug up completely, cleared everything off the floor. Then I grabbed a claw hammer and, hand shaking, began prying up the first floorboard near the center of the living room. It came free, surprisingly easy. Too easy. Beneath was not insulation, not joists, not even dust. It was flesh. Wet, pale, pulsing flesh, with veins that flinched away from the light of my flashlight. I dropped the board and stumbled back, ball rising in my throat. The floor rippled, an actual undulation, as if something enormous just beneath the surface had reacted. Then I heard it, a sound I can only describe as a throat clearing from beneath me. Low, mucusy, sentient. I ran out of the apartment barefoot, leaving my phone, my keys, everything. Just ran. The hallway outside was warped, walls bowed subtly inward, the air humid and damp, like I was walking through the inside of a mouth. I stayed in a motel that night, slept with the lights on, but even then, in that unfamiliar bed, I kept feeling the phantom press of the floor against my soles, like it was remembering me. I called the police the next day, told them I suspected structural rot. When the officer arrived and I showed him the loose board, I braced for his reaction. But when he peeled it back, it was normal, just subfloor, joists, insulation, no pulsing, no veins, no flesh. He looked at me like I was wasting his time. I couldn't blame him, but I knew what I saw. That night, I returned again, cautious but desperate to gather my belongings and maybe set up cameras. If I could capture it, maybe I wasn't losing my mind. Everything in the apartment smelled slightly off. Sweet cloying, like rotting peaches, or breath trapped in a jar for too long. I placed one camera on the floor, one by the window, one in the hallway outside. Then I turned on the audio recorder on my laptop, and I waited. The apartment waited with me. Hours passed. Then sometime around 2:30 a.m., I heard it again. The floor sighed, but this time it didn't stop. There was a wet, stretching sound, like something being peeled away. The boards behind me creaked violently, like they were being pried up from below. I turned and saw them rise. A shape began pressing up through the floor, not with force, but with intention, as though climbing out. Only, it wasn't solid. It was dark, almost smoke-like, but heavier. It coalesced into a vaguely human silhouette, then melted into the space again. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Then something cold touched my ankle. I screamed and bolted out the front door. When I checked the footage later at a friend's house, most of it was corrupted. But on the hallway camera, I caught a glimpse of something terrifying. Just before 3 a.m., the front door of my apartment opened on its own, and from within, the camera picked up a low, whistling moan, like air being forced through a tight space. Then the screen went black. I haven't been back since. But the worst part? The floor. It's been showing up in my dreams, breathing beneath me. Slow, steady, waiting, always waiting. And every morning now, when I wake up in whatever safe place I try to sleep, my feet feel damp, like something has been pressing up against them from below. I thought staying away from the apartment would help. It didn't. The breathing followed me, not literally at first, but the memory of it, the rhythm, started to nest in my chest. At night, I'd lie in someone else's bed or a cheap motel and feel it beneath the mattress. Not in the springs, not in the frame, underneath below the floorboards. That slow inhale, the pause, the soft, damp exhale. My feet would go numb, then warm, then damp. It wasn't a memory anymore. It was presence. I tried to convince myself I was unraveling, that I'd had a psychotic break and nothing in the apartment had ever breathed, that the pulsing flesh had been sleep deprivation, hallucination, stress, black mold, something. So I booked a therapy appointment. Just one. I didn't talk about the apartment. I didn't mention the floor. I just said I felt like something was watching me while I slept, that I'd become sensitive to. Spaces, architecture, airflow. The therapist asked me a strange question. When you walk through a room, do you ever feel it adjust to your steps? I froze. She smiled, not warmly. Some houses do that. They accommodate. I didn't go back to her. That night, I tried to sleep in my car. I parked by a 24-hour gas station. I wanted lights, life, people, even if distant. But at 3:06 a.m., condensation formed on the inside of my windshield. I hadn't been breathing that hard. Something behind the seat whispered, not with words but with wetness, like something trying to speak through a soaked towel. I didn't look. I started the car and drove, not stopping until the sun cracked the sky. And even then, I felt watched from below. I needed answers. If I was cursed, haunted, possessed, I needed to understand why. I called an old friend, Jeremy. He did underground plumbing and inspection. He used to talk about sinkholes, rats the size of cats, and sealed basements. I didn't tell him everything. Just said I had a weird rental with odd floors and needed his tools and help. He agreed. We met back at the apartment the next day. I was sweating before we even entered. The air outside the door was humid, wrong. Jeremy wrinkled his nose the moment we stepped in. Jesus, this place smells like bad meat left in a crawl space. I just nodded. We moved the furniture, pulled up boards, I try to hide the shake in my hands. Then we reach the area near the middle, right where I had first felt the pulse. Jeremy's crowbar went down, then clinked off something just under the wood. He frowned. That's not a joist. He pulled. The board snapped up with a groan, and beneath it was metal. Smooth, cold, tarnished, a round hatch, old, industrial, bolted down to the subfloor like it had been there before the apartment was ever built. Jeremy laughed nervously. What the hell is this? A bunker? We pried, fought with it. Eventually, it gave way with a sickening schluck like it had been sealed with something organic. The smell that came up was rot and acid and something sweet. Beneath the hatch wasn't a room. It was a tunnel, descending, flesh-lined. The walls weren't stone or brick. They were veined, ribbed, moist. Jeremy backed away. That's not construction. That's not anything I've seen. Then something moved down there, far away, but loud enough to rattle dust from the ceiling. A thud, then another, rhythmic. Jeremy dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor. I picked it up and shined it down into the tunnel. The light only reached maybe 20 feet before it was swallowed by dark and something else, breath. I swear the beam wobbled like heat rising from flesh. And then I saw it, at the edge of the light. Fingers, not bone, not claw. They were wet, human-like fingers, paler than anything natural and too long. They slowly withdrew, sliding back into the dark as though retreating into a throat. I slammed the hatch shut. Jeremy didn't speak. He just walked out the door and never returned my texts. That night, I dreamed I was lying naked on a wooden floor, and a tongue was licking the underside of the boards from below. Each plank bowed and flexed with the weight of it. When I woke, my mouth was filled with splinters. I began digging through public records, desperate for any thread. A local historian finally helped me find a clue. Before the apartment building, the land had been home to a 19th century sanitarium for the mentally ill, built on the ruins of an even older site. The original land registry dated back to 1769. A man named Elijah Fenlow had lived there. The registry noted, land rejected by the church, deemed unfit, unhallowed, marked by unnatural resonance in the ground. The phrase stuck with me, unnatural resonance. Sound through wood, echo through floor, breathing through structure. I've been back to the apartment only once since the hatch. Not to stay, just to listen. I put my ear to the floor, and I swear, beneath the boards it said my name. It wasn't words. Not really. Just the rhythm of them. The exhale forming syllables. Thumm. Tom. Then the hatch knocked. Twice. And the floor rose like a chest inhaling. I'm not sure how long I can stay out now. Every building I walk into eventually shifts beneath me. Hotels. Libraries. Even grocery store aisles. The breath is spreading. And I think the thing below has followed my weight. It knows how I move. It recognizes my footfall. It began subtly, like a tapping under my soles. I first noticed it in the living room of my brother's now empty apartment when I walked across the carpet. 1, 2, then 3 light thumps in time with my steps. Only when I paused did they fall silent. I dropped my bag and crouched, pressing my ear to the floor. Nothing, but I felt it. The wood vibrated softly like a pedal against a drumhead. I backed off, spine pricked with dread. Everywhere I stayed after that, the tapping followed. Hotel halls, friends' floors, hardwood and diners. Always, when I stepped, they matched me. One night in a motel near my old job, I woke to the sound of scraping, not from above, but below. The mattress sagged in the center, shifting with the sound of what being shifted, moved, creaked in an almost discontinuous pattern. Not random, not arrhythmic, deliberate. I sat up, straddled the mattress, waited for the next scrape. Seconds. Then a gentle tap, low, soft. Then another, closer. I backed away. My skin felt alive with shock. I realized they were tracking me. I became obsessed. I began carrying floor scan sensors, simple tools used in construction to detect anomalies. Wooden planks that dipped, subfloors that resonated. I recorded data at every place I stayed. Every map told the same story. Where I walked, the floor sank fractionally and pressure readings shifted. Then there was always that inhalation recorded on audio, even in rooms with no old wood, concrete floors included. It wasn't the building. It was me. The entity followed my presence. Follow my contact. One evening, I tested it in a public space, a library with marble floors. No shift there, no breath. My feet were too soft for marble to distort. But I stepped onto an old wooden banister at the entrance. My boots met a pulse. Beneath that, I heard a breathing. My steps were echoed with soft inhalation. I stumbled back, out onto the street. I couldn't avoid it anymore. I had to go back. I had to peek again into that hatch in the Sycamore apartment, this time ready. I prepped. Masks to block the acidic air. A metal plate as a barrier. A camera tethered to a cable. Salt lines around the hatch. I pried it open. The hatch lifted with its old schluck. The smell hit me harder this time. Intense rot, iron, damp flesh. I held the metal plate in front and lowered the camera. At 5 feet down, the walls glistened with fluid, veins pulsing faintly. At 10 feet, the tunnel narrowed into an oval corridor ribbed with fleshy membranes like lungs. And at 15 feet, I saw the weight chamber, a fist-sized cavity within a membrane field that pulsed at the same tempo as my own heartbeat. And there was something in it, a seed, if you could call it that, a dark, pulsing mass like a heart. From there, aerial tendrils wove outward through the membrane walls, blending into ribs and ribs into subfloor veins that fed the house. I dropped the camera in shock. It slipped and fell. The thing pulsed. The entire thing responded. A low click. Then water dripped rhythmically inside me, synchronized. I scrambled out, slamming the hatch shut and drawing salt over it. I bolted from the house without looking back. I started recording everything. My movement, my contact with floors, steps, pressure readings, audio of each breath, every inhale the floors took with me. I matched it to my heartbeat, almost identical. They weren't mimicking me. They were merging. You can't flee your heartbeat. You can't outrun your lungs. They were building backbone beneath me, structural flesh, connected to every building I interacted with. And then it got worse. My phone vibrated while I traced salt on the hatch. Come back. The screen glowed, no sender. Just one text. Come back. I dropped the phone into a bowl of salt water. The screen flickered, then died. I can't sleep. Not anymore. When I lie down, I feel the pulse under my chest again. It resonates with mine. I know, rationally, I should sell all my belongings, move abroad. But something roots me here. I need to end this. I need to destroy the core. I found contacts in excavation, people who dig basements, foundations. They remember the sanitarium that was raised, the gravel pit they found under it that no records mention. Gravel pit, where the core grows. I'm going back. With equipment. With noise. With fire. I don't know if I'll come back. But I have to try. I didn't sleep before going back. I couldn't. Every time I shut my eyes, I felt something shift beneath me. The mattress would subtly sink, as if absorbing the weight of my body. The air in the room would grow still, then tight. Pressurized, like being inside a lung that had stopped exhaling. And I'd hear it, the breath. Faint, wet, steady, not mine, not only mine. Something else was breathing with me now. Not in sync, not out of sync, but just behind, as if mimicking in real time, always a fraction of a second late. It had learned my rhythm, and now it was trying to lead. I drove to the Sycamore house with nothing but a half-rusted crowbar, a gallon of industrial acid, and a bundle of flares wrapped in salt-treated canvas. The road felt different this time. The air felt low, almost compressed, as if the further I drove, the thicker everything around me became, like moving through layers of soft meat. When I arrived, the house looked worse, not in the way of rot or time, but shape. The porch slanted inward toward the door. The siding buckled in the center like a stomach inhaling slowly. The windows had gone black, reflective, oily. I hesitated. Every part of my brain screamed, "Do not go back in." But I had to. I stepped inside. The sound, once creaking wood, now had an organic feel. The boards bent with my weight, yes, but in a way that suggested acceptance. Anticipation. I wasn't walking on a floor. I was walking on skin. I reached the hallway where the hidden panel once lay. It was already open. No door. No cover. No lock. Just the dark, yawning slit in the floorboards, shaped like a half-grin. The smell hit me harder than last time. Iron, mildew, blood, and something else. Birth, like a newborn covered in wet membrane. I knelt, pulled the crowbar across my back, and dropped the flare into the hole. It flickered orange as it fell, revealing the ribs I had seen in the camera footage. Bone or cartilage, I couldn't tell. They flexed slightly, as if flinching at the light. I climbed in. The shaft pulsed with heat. Not furnace heat, body heat. Like crawling into the throat of a dying animal. My hands stuck to the walls as I descended. They weren't dry. There was moisture, a light slickness, mucus-like coating the entire shaft. 10 feet down, I heard the breathing. Close, deep, layered. It had lungs. The tunnel opened into a chamber I still can't describe properly. It wasn't symmetrical. It was alive, asymmetrical, constantly shifting as if resettling muscle and tendon. The floor curved upward in spots, pulsing softly. Veins ran through the walls, glowing faintly blue. And in the center, a large quivering mass. It looked like a heart the size of a refrigerator, but covered in something not quite skin. A thin, almost translucent casing, twitching as if irritated by light. Black lines ran along its surface, veins maybe, and then movement. A ripple ran across its length, then another. It was breathing faster now, because it knew I was here. As I stepped forward, the chamber tightened. The walls flexed inwards, as if the space was being compressed. And then I heard voices, not speaking, mouthing. Children, a chorus of them. Soft, echoing voices in the back of my mind. Are you listening? Do you feel it? Your steps are ours now. I spun, no one behind me, but the voices weren't coming from outside. They were coming from beneath my feet. I stepped onto the mass. It gave under my weight, but held firm, like stepping onto a huge, warm lung. Beneath me, I could feel movement, not just muscle twitching, but figures shifting. I dropped the rest of the flares around the chamber and lit them. Orange and red light cast pulsing shadows. Then I saw them. Hands. Tiny, malformed hands, pushing outward from beneath the flesh, trapped just under the surface. Dozens of them. Some large. Some infant-sized. All writhing. All pressing up. The floor was made of bodies, or pieces of them, absorbed, broken down, repurposed. This wasn't just an entity. This was a womb. I uncapped the acid. The breathing stopped. I hesitated, but only for a second. I poured the acid across the pulsing heart. The reaction was instant. A deep, bellowing groan shook the entire space. The walls contracted violently. My knees buckled. The heart convulsed, rippling in all directions. The hands began thrashing beneath the surface. A scream erupted, not from one mouth, but from many, layered, tormented, like children crying through milk-thick throats. I ran. The tunnel behind me began to close, the walls slapping shut in rhythmic bursts. But I made it. I clawed out of the hatch just as the whole hallway caved inward. The sycamore house inhaled, literally sucked in upon itself, and collapsed. I stumbled out into the yard, watching as the roof buckled and folded in like crushed lung tissue. Then came the silence. No wind, no breath, just nothing. The house is gone now. There's nothing on the lot. No wreckage, no crater, no debris. Just soil. Soft, moist soil that leaves imprints when no one is walking across it. I left town, stayed with friends, but followed. In my apartment in a different state, the floor feels warm under my feet sometimes. And when I lie still at night, the mattress moves in time with something I'm no longer sure is my breath. Sometimes I wake up with dried fluid between my toes, or find tiny fingerprints on the inside of my closet door. And worst of all, the children's voices have returned. Only now they speak. You try to cut us out. We are inside the floor. We are inside you. If you're reading this, and you felt the floor twitch beneath your feet, if you've ever stood still in the silence of your home and felt a breath that wasn't yours, don't investigate. Don't go beneath the boards. Don't proceed. You'll only make it stronger. You'll only help it learn your rhythm. Because once it learns, you don't breathe alone anymore.